I'm Elise Monroe, 36, living in Portland, Oregon. By day, I'm the chief financial officer at a boutique architecture firm, crunching numbers for sleek, modern designs. By night, I'm the wife of Caleb, my college sweetheart, the man I thought I'd grow old with. We've been together for 12 years, married for 7. Once, I believed nothing could crack the foundation we built. But sometimes, the end doesn't come with a screaming match or a slammed door. Sometimes, it's just a flicker of light on a phone screen. That morning started like any other. I was up before Caleb, brushing my teeth in our bathroom, the hum of the electric toothbrush filling the quiet. His phone sat on the counter, charging when it buzzed. The screen lit up, and a text preview flashed. From a name I didn't know. Asterisk, so excited for the lake house, wine, and that red silk dress. Counting the minutes. Asterisk, my heart stopped. Toothpaste foam dripped down my chin. My feet felt glued to the cold marble floor. Behind the steamed-up shower door, Caleb was rinsing off, singing some off-key tune, oblivious. I stared at the phone as the screen faded to black. I didn't unlock it. I didn't need to. That text wasn't a shock, it was a confirmation. For months, I'd felt something off. Caleb's sudden work trips to Eugene, leaving me alone in our too-big house. His phone, once left carelessly on the couch, now always in his pocket, even in the bathroom. His eyes, once warm and locked on mine, now slid past me like I was a stranger in a crowd. I told myself, asterisk, don't be crazy, Elise. Marriages get stale. Don't overthink it. Asterisk, but now, staring at that fading screen, I wanted to scream at myself. Stop being blind. I rinsed my mouth, splashed water on my face, and applied mascara with steady hands. No trembling. Just a hollow calm, like I'd stepped outside my own body, watching a movie of my life. When I left the bathroom, Caleb was in our bedroom, knotting his tie in front of the mirror. He glanced at me, flashing his usual grin, as if the world hadn't just shifted. Got a conference in Eugene this weekend, he said, smoothing his collar. Back late Sunday. I nodded, my voice flat. Pack a jacket. It's chilly at night. I didn't mention the text. I didn't ask who was counting minutes in a red silk dress. I let him keep his script, his carefully rehearsed act. In my mind, something else was forming, a plan, a quiet unraveling. I wouldn't say a word until it was ready. Caleb left for work, briefcase in hand, oblivious to the storm brewing behind my calm smile. I sat on the edge of our bed, the room still smelling of his cedarwood cologne. My mind replayed the last few months. The late nights he blamed on client dinners. The new password on his laptop. The way he'd started locking his phone, claiming it was company policy. I'd ignored it all, chalking it up to stress, to the grind of his marketing job. But that text, it was a key, unlocking a door I'd been too scared to open. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I felt a strange clarity, like fog lifting off the Willamette River. I thought about the lake house, the one we'd bought 5 years ago as a retreat, a place to rebuild after I miscarried our first child. Caleb had promised to add a deck overlooking the water. A promise now as empty as his excuses. That lake house, our sanctuary, was where this stranger planned to wear her red silk dress. The betrayal stung, but it also woke me up. I spent the day at work, moving through meetings like a ghost. Numbers blurred on my screen, but my mind was elsewhere, piecing together a plan. Caleb's Thursday nights were predictable. Tennis with his buddies, followed by 3 beers at the local pub. He'd come home, slightly buzzed, and sleep like a stone. That night I waited. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the fridge. Caleb's snores echoed from our bedroom. I crept to his side, his phone on the nightstand. His right thumb, lax in sleep, was all I needed. I pressed it gently to the sensor. Click. The screen glowed. My hands didn't shake as I scrolled. The chill in my spine was enough to keep me steady. The text from Lila was just the start. There were dozens, months of messages, flirty and intimate, planning weekends at our lake house. Lila Morgan, 40, a pharmaceutical rep from Salem. Not some young fling, but a woman with a life, a career, and as I discovered in an older message, a husband. Asterisk, Evans at a conference in Boise this weekend. Lake house is ours. Asterisk, Evan, her husband. I googled him. Evan Harper, 43, a structural engineer with a firm in Beaverton. His LinkedIn photo showed a man with dark hair, a slight beard, and eyes that looked tired but kind. I didn't sleep that night. Each message was a cut, slicing through memories of Caleb and me. Our late-night talks, our dreams of a family, our promises at that lake house. Every business trip to Eugene was a lie. Every night I sat alone, reviewing budgets while the dishwasher hummed. He was with her. By morning, I was at my desk drafting a message to Evan. I rewrote it 20 times, each version shorter, sharper. Finally, Hi Evan. I'm Elise Monroe. I believe my husband, Caleb, and your wife, Lila, are having an affair. I have proof. Can we talk? My number is 503-722-1984. My palms were slick with sweat when I hit send. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. Elise? This is Evan. His voice was low, steady, but there was a crack in it, like a dam about to break. Is this a prank? I wish, I said, my throat tight. I have texts, photos, their plans for the lake house this weekend. A long pause. Then, what do you want to do? I gripped the phone, my voice slow, deliberate. Meet them there. Before they open the wine or slip into anything red. He didn't answer right away. I heard a sharp breath then. Okay. But first, I need to see what you've got. We agreed to meet Saturday morning at a diner in Albany, halfway between Portland and the lake house. I hung up, my heart pounding, not with fear but with purpose. The plan was forming, not out of rage, but from a need to face the truth head-on. I glanced at the photo on my desk, me and Caleb at the lake house smiling 3 years ago. I turned it face down. That life was gone. What came next was up to me. The days after that text felt like walking through fog. I went to work, smiled at colleagues, and nodded through meetings, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying every moment I'd missed. Caleb's lies had been there all along, hiding in plain sight. I'd just been too trusting, too busy building our life to see the cracks. Now, with Lila's message burned into my brain, I couldn't stop seeing them. Every glance, every excuse, every late night. The truth wasn't just in that text. It was in the months I'd spent ignoring my gut. Caleb's business trips started about a year ago. He'd come home from work, kiss my forehead and say, "Got a client meeting in Eugene next weekend." Boring stuff. I'd nod, pack him a thermos of coffee, and wave as he drove off. Alone, I'd work late, the house too quiet, the lake house mortgage statements piling up on my desk. I paid them, every month, while he was gone. I never questioned why his trips always fell on weekends, why he never invited me along. "You're swamped, Elise," he'd say. "You need the rest." I believed him. I wanted to. Then there were the small things. His phone, once tossed on the kitchen counter, now never left his side. He'd take it into the bathroom, the screen angled away from me. Work emails. He'd mutter if I raised an eyebrow. His laptop, once shared for movie nights, now had a password I didn't know. "IT department rules," he said, shrugging. I let it slide. I told myself, don't be that wife, Elise. Don't nag. He's stressed. But stress doesn't make someone stop looking at you. Caleb's eyes, once soft and warm, now skimmed over me like I was furniture. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake, Caleb snoring beside me, his cedarwood cologne faint on the sheets. I'd replay our years together. College, when he'd sneak me coffee during late-night study sessions. Our wedding, when he cried during his vows. The lake house, where we'd sit by the fire, dreaming of kids. But those memories clashed with the present. The way he'd flinch if I touched his phone. The way he'd change the subject when I asked about his day. The way he'd say, "Love you." But his voice sounded hollow, like a line he'd rehearsed. I started noticing receipts. One, crumpled in his jacket pocket, was from a wine bar in Salem, 40 miles from Eugene, dated a weekend he was at a conference. Another, from an Uber, showed a drop-off in a residential neighborhood, not a hotel. I'd stare at them, heart racing, then tuck them away. Maybe it's nothing, I'd think. Maybe he stopped for a drink with coworkers. But doubt grew like mold, quiet and persistent. Then came the lake house. We hadn't been there together in 2 years. After my miscarriage, it felt too heavy, too full of what we'd lost. Caleb promised to fix it up, add a deck, make it ours again. But he never did. Instead, he'd go alone, claiming he needed space to think. I'd stay home, working, while he was there, with her. Lila. The thought made my stomach twist. Our lake house, where I'd mourned our baby, was now their playground. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was a theft of sacred ground. I started roughly 6 months ago. I'd been so buried in work, promotions, deadlines, budgets, that I didn't notice at first. But then I'd find myself alone on weekends, the house echoing with his absence. I'd call, and he'd pick up, voice bright but rushed. Just heading into a meeting, babe. Talk later. I'd hear background noise, laughter, clinking glasses, that didn't sound like a conference room. I'd hang up, feeling stupid for calling, and dive back into work to numb the ache. One night, I found an old photo from a company event on his firm's social media. Caleb, smiling, arm around a woman with dark hair and a sharp grin. The caption mentioned client partners, but his hand rested too low on her waist. I zoomed in, heart pounding. Was that Lila? I couldn't be sure. I closed the tab, ashamed of myself. You're spiraling, Elise, I thought. You're seeing things that aren't there. But now I knew they were. The morning after I saw the text, I sat at my desk, coffee gone cold. My mind was a storm, tracing every clue I'd ignored. The locked phone, the receipts, the photo. The way Caleb's "I love you" felt like a reflex, not a feeling. I'd been a fool, but not anymore. I opened my laptop and started a new email draft, labeling it timeline. I listed every suspicious moment, every trip, every lie. It was long, 2 pages by the time I finished, but it wasn't empty. It was my truth, my proof I'd been right to feel that way all along. I didn't confront Caleb that day. He came home from work, humming, tossing his gym bag on the floor. Tennis was killer tonight, he said, pouring a beer. I nodded, stirring dinner on the stove, my face a mask. Good game. I asked, voice calm. He grinned, oblivious. Yeah, smoked those guys. I smiled back, but inside, I was screaming. He didn't notice. He never did. That night, I lay beside him, his snores steady, his phone on the nightstand. I didn't touch it again. I didn't need to. The text had already shown me enough. But as I stared at the ceiling, I thought about Lila's husband, Evan. Did he know? Was he lying awake, too, feeling the same hollow ache? I didn't know him, but I knew his pain. We were strangers, bound by the same betrayal. I closed my eyes, my plan sharpening. I wouldn't yell at Caleb. I wouldn't cry. I'd wait, gather proof, and face him when the time was right. And I wouldn't do it alone. The next morning, I sent the message to Evan. My hands shook as I typed, but my resolve didn't waver. Hi, Evan. I'm Elise Monroe. I believe my husband, Caleb, and your wife, Lila, are having an affair. I have proof. Can we talk? I hit send, my heart in my throat. Hours later, he called. His voice, deep and strained, asked if it was a prank. I told him about the texts, the lake house, the red silk dress. He went quiet, then agreed to meet. The fog was lifting. The truth was coming, and I was ready to face it. Caleb's smile that Friday morning was the same as always, easy, carefree, like nothing in the world could touch him. He stood in our kitchen sipping coffee, scrolling through his phone. I leaned against the counter, stirring cream into my mug, watching him. My heart pounded, but my face stayed calm. The text from Lila still burned in my mind. Lake house, wine, red silk dress *. But I didn't let it show. I couldn't. Not yet. The plan was forming, and I needed him to think everything was normal. One wrong move, and he'd suspect I knew. Big day at work? I asked, my voice light, like I hadn't spent the night scrolling through his secret life. He glanced up, nodding. Yeah, pitching to a new client. Might run late. He set his mug down, grabbed his jacket. Then it's Eugene for the conference tomorrow. Back Sunday night. I nodded, my lips curving into a small smile. Sounds busy. Don't forget your scarf. Gets cold out there. He chuckled, brushing past me to grab his keys. You worry too much, Elise. He pecked my cheek, his lips cool, and headed for the door. Love you, he called over his shoulder. Love you too, I said, my voice flat, but he didn't notice. The door clicked shut, and I was alone. My smile dropped. I gripped the counter, knuckles white, the air in the kitchen suddenly too thick. Love you. The words felt like ash in my mouth. How long had he been saying them while planning weekends with her? How long had I been a prop in his carefully staged life? I moved through the day like a shadow. At work, I sat through a budget meeting, nodding at spreadsheets, but my mind was elsewhere. Caleb's lies played on a loop. Every conference, every late night, every time he'd dodged my questions with a grin. I thought about the lake house, our lake house, where he'd promised to build a deck after my miscarriage. We'd sat on the porch, his arm around me, swearing we'd heal together. Now it was their playground. The thought made my chest ache, but it also steeled me. I wasn't the naive wife anymore. I was awake. Back home, I cooked dinner, something simple, pasta, sauce from a jar. Caleb wouldn't be home until late, after tennis and beers with his buddies. I ate alone at the dining table, the silence heavy. The house felt different now, like it belonged to someone else's life. The framed photos on the wall, us at the lake house, us on our honeymoon, mocked me. I turned my chair so I wouldn't have to look at them. My phone buzzed. A text from Evan, Lila's husband. Asterisk, can we meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow? Sunny's Diner in Albany. Asterisk, I typed back, asterisk, yes. I'll bring everything. Asterisk, my fingers lingered over the screen. Evan's voice from our call yesterday echoed in my head. Low, steady, but cracked with pain. He'd asked if it was a prank, like he couldn't believe his world was crumbling too. I didn't know him, but I felt him. We were strangers, tied by the same wound. I opened my laptop, pulling up the timeline document I'd started. It was my anchor, a record of Caleb's lies. I added more dates of his trips, the wine bar receipt, the Uber drop-off in Salem. I saved screenshots of Lila's texts, the ones I'd found on his phone last night. Each one was a dagger, but I kept going. I needed proof, not just for Evan, but for myself. To prove I wasn't crazy, that the man I loved had built a secret life behind my back. Caleb came home around 11, smelling of beer and sweat. Hey babe, he said, dropping his gym bag by the door. He kicked off his shoes, oblivious to my silence. Tennis was brutal. I'm beat. Long night? I asked, folding laundry on the couch, my voice steady. Yeah, those guys don't quit. He grinned, heading to the fridge for a water. Gonna crash. You coming to bed? In a bit, I said, smoothing a towel. He nodded, disappearing upstairs. I waited, listening for his footsteps, the creak of the bed. 10 minutes later, his snores drifted down. I exhaled, my shoulders loosening. He had no idea I'd seen his phone, no idea I'd contacted Evan. He thought he was safe in his lies. That thought fueled me. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay beside Caleb, his arm flung across the bed, his breathing deep and even. My eyes traced the ceiling, my mind racing. I thought about confronting him right then, shaking him awake, shoving the phone in his face, demanding answers. But what would he do? Deny it? Gaslight me? Say it was just a fling? No. I needed more than his excuses. I needed him to face the truth, not just with me, but with Lila, with Evan. I needed him to see the wreckage he'd caused. By morning, I was up before him, brewing coffee, packing a small bag for Albany. Caleb stumbled downstairs, hair mussed, yawning. You're up early, he said, grabbing a mug. Meeting a client. I lied, my voice smooth. Back later. He nodded, scrolling his phone. Cool. I'm heading to Eugene soon. Text me if you need anything. I forced a smile. Will do. I grabbed my keys, my bag, and left. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel, my heart thudding. The drive to Albany was an hour, enough time to steady myself. I wasn't just meeting Evan. I was stepping into the truth, no turning back. Caleb thought he was headed to the lake house with Lila, wine, and a red silk dress. He had no idea I'd be there too, with Evan, with proof, with the end of his lies. I stopped at a gas station halfway, filling the tank, staring at the pump's ticking numbers. My phone buzzed, a photo from Caleb, him in his car, sunglasses on, grinning. Asterisk, off to Eugene. Miss you already. Asterisk, I stared at it, my stomach twisting. He was so good at this, so practiced. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my timeline document, adding one last note. Today he lied again. I closed it, started the car, and drove toward Albany, toward Evan, toward the moment everything would change. Caleb's phone felt heavier in my hand than it should have. It was Thursday night, the house dark and quiet except for his steady snores. The scent of his beer and body wash lingered in the air, a mix that once felt comforting but now turned my stomach. I sat on the edge of our bed, his thumb lax against the sensor. Click. The screen glowed, casting a cold light across my face. My heart thumped, but my fingers were steady. I'd seen the text from Lila yesterday, but I needed more. I needed the full scope of his betrayal. I opened the messages, scrolling past the one about the lake house and the red silk dress. There were dozens, months of them. Each one a punch I hadn't braced for. Lila Morgan, 34, wasn't some fleeting affair. She was a pharmaceutical executive from Salem, sharp and confident. Her words flirty but calculated. Missed you at the bar last week, she wrote in one. Next time, no work talk, just us. Caleb's reply. Asterisk deal. You in that dress again. Asterisk my throat tightened. I kept going. Older messages painted a clearer picture. They'd met at a trade show 8 months ago, bonded over drinks and spiraled from there. Weekends at our lake house. Asterisk our asterisk lake house. While I stayed home, buried in work. Evan's out of town next week, Lila wrote in one. Asterisk lake house is ours. Bring that Pinot you love. Asterisk Evan. Her husband. I'd already Googled him. Evan Harper, 43, structural engineer, kind eyes in his LinkedIn photo. He didn't deserve this any more than I did. I found photos in their thread. Lila, laughing, her dark hair catching the lake house's porch light. Another of her feet propped on the coffee table, the one I'd picked out at an antique shop. Caleb had sent one too. Him by the lake, grinning, the same grin he'd flashed at me that morning. My chest ached, like someone had carved out a piece of me. This wasn't just an affair. It was a second life, one he'd built while I paid the mortgage, cooked his dinners, and believed his lies. I dug deeper. Calendar invites for meetings in Salem, timed with his Eugene trips. A voice note from Lila, her voice low, teasing. Asterisk can't wait for Saturday. Don't be late. Asterisk I played it, her words slicing through the quiet. I stopped it halfway, my hands shaking now. I opened his email, searching Lila. Nothing. He was careful, keeping it to texts, but not careful enough. I found a bank statement in his trash folder, $200 at a Salem wine shop, dated a weekend he was at a conference. I screenshotted it, adding it to my folder. Then I saw her mention Evan again. Asterisk he's in Boise till Sunday. We're free. Asterisk I paused, staring at the name. Evan Harper, a stranger I'd never met, was living the same lie I was. His wife was stealing moments at my lake house, with my husband, while he worked unaware. I opened LinkedIn again, pulled up his profile. His photo stared back, dark hair, slight stubble, a tired smile. I imagined him coming home to an empty house, like me, wondering why things felt off. My anger wasn't just for Caleb anymore. It was for Lila, for their selfishness, for the lives they were breaking. I kept scrolling, finding more. A text from Caleb. Asterisk got us a reservation at that Italian place you love. Saturday 7 p.m. Asterisk Lila's reply. Asterisk perfect. Wear that blue shirt. You know why. Asterisk I swallowed hard, my eyes burning. That blue shirt hung in our closet, the one I'd ironed for him last month. I wanted to rip it apart, but I didn't. I took another screenshot instead. My timeline document was growing, a catalog of lies I'd ignored for too long. I checked his call log. Late night calls to Lila, some lasting an hour, timed when I was asleep or at work. I found a deleted voicemail in his trash, restored it. Lila's voice soft. Asterisk hey, just thinking about you. Call me when you're free. Asterisk I saved it. Every piece was a brick in the wall I was building, one I'd show Caleb, Lila, and Evan when the time came. By 2 a.m., my eyes were dry, my body numb. I'd found enough, texts, photos, receipts, proof of a life Caleb hid while I slept beside him. I locked his phone, placed it back on the nightstand, and slid under the covers. His snores didn't falter. He had no idea I'd seen everything, no idea I'd contacted Evan, no idea his world was about to crack open. I stared at the ceiling, the plan sharpening in my mind. I wouldn't confront him alone. Evan deserved to know, to stand with me. Together, we'd face them at the lake house, where their lies began. I didn't sleep. My mind churned, replaying the texts, the photos, the voicemail. I thought about the lake house, where Caleb and I had mourned our lost baby, where he'd promised to build a deck. Now it was tainted, a stage for his affair. I thought about Lila smiling in those photos, and Evan, oblivious like me. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a theft of trust, of time, of the life I'd built with Caleb. By morning I was up before him making coffee, my face a mask. Caleb shuffled in, yawning. "You look tired," he said, pouring a mug. "Late night working." I lied, stirring my coffee. "You. Just tennis and beers." He grinned, scrolling his phone. "Heading to Eugene today. Conference stuff." I nodded, my voice steady. "Safe trip." He kissed my forehead, grabbed his bag, and left. I watched his car disappear, my hands tight around my mug. He thought he was headed to Lila, to wine, to that red silk dress. He didn't know I'd seen his secrets, didn't know I was meeting Evan, didn't know the truth was coming for him. I grabbed my laptop, opened my timeline, and added one last note. Asterisk found proof. Meeting Evan tomorrow. Asterisk I saved it, packed my bag, and headed to work. The day blurred by, my mind on Albany, on Evan, on the lake house. Caleb's lies were unraveling, and I was ready to pull the final thread. The message to Evan Harper sat in my sent folder. A quiet bomb waiting to detonate. Asterisk Hi Evan. I'm Elise Monroe. I believe my husband, Caleb, and your wife, Lila, are having an affair. I have proof. Can we talk? Asterisk I'd hit send that morning, my palms slick, my heart hammering. Now sitting at my desk, the office hum fading around me, I waited. Caleb was at work, oblivious, probably texting Lila about their lake house weekend. I stared at my phone, willing it to ring, dreading it all the same. It buzzed at 2:17 p.m. Unknown number. I stepped into the hallway, closing my office door. "Hello, Elise. This is Evan Harper." His voice was deep, steady, but there was a tremor, like he was holding himself together. Is this some kind of joke? My throat tightened. I wish it was. I leaned against the wall, clutching the phone. I saw a text on Caleb's phone. From Lila. About the lake house, wine, a red silk dress. There's more. Texts, photos, receipts. Silence. Then a sharp breath. You're sure? I've got screenshots. Months of messages. They're meeting at our lake house this weekend. I paused, my voice dropping. I'm sorry, Evan. I know you don't deserve this. Another pause, longer. Neither do you. His voice cracked, just enough to betray the weight he carried. What do you want to do? I gripped the phone tighter, my words slow, deliberate. I want to meet them there. Sunday before they settle in. Let them see us, see the truth. He didn't answer right away. I heard a faint rustle, like he was shifting in his seat. You're serious? I am. My voice was firm, though my stomach churned. But I need to show you what I've got first. To make sure you're in. A long exhale. Okay. Where? There's a diner in Albany, Sunny's, halfway between Portland and the lake house. Tomorrow 9 a.m. I'll bring everything. All right. His voice was quieter now, resigned. I'll be there. I hung up, my hands trembling. I slid the phone into my pocket and returned to my desk, the office lights too bright, the air too thin. Evan's voice echoed in my head, tired, hurt, but resolute. He was like me, blindsided but ready to face the wreckage. I opened my laptop, pulling up the timeline document. Screenshots of Caleb and Lila's texts, the wine shop receipt, the Uber confirmation from Lila's neighborhood, Lila's voicemail. I saved it all to a flash drive, my proof, my armor. That night, Caleb came home late, smelling of beer from his tennis night. Hey babe, he said, tossing his keys on the counter. Long day. Same as always. I lied, chopping vegetables for a salad. You. Clients are killing me. He grinned, grabbing a water from the fridge. Off to Eugene tomorrow. Conference stuff. I nodded, my knife steady against the cutting board. Don't forget your charger. You always do. He laughed oblivious. You're the best, Elise. He kissed my temple, then headed upstairs. I listened to his footsteps, the shower turning on, his off-key humming. My chest ached, but I pushed it down. He thought he was untouchable. Headed to Lila, to their secret world. He had no idea I'd spoken to Evan. No idea his lies were unraveling. I barely slept, my mind racing. I thought about Evan, wondering what he was feeling. Was he staring at the ceiling like me, replaying his own clues? Lila's late nights, her locked phone, her excuses? We were strangers, but our pain was the same. Tomorrow, at Sunny's diner, we'd meet, two people bound by betrayal, planning to face the people who'd broken us. Morning came too fast. I was up at 6 a.m., coffee brewing, my bag packed with the flash drive and a notebook. Caleb was still asleep, his suitcase by the door, ready for his conference. I left a note on the counter. Asterisk, meeting a client. Back later. Have a good trip. Asterisk, I drove to Albany, the highway blurring past, my heart a steady drum. The flash drive sat in my console, heavy with truth. Sunny's diner was a small, faded building off the highway, its neon sign flickering. I arrived early, choosing a booth by the window, facing the parking lot. My hands gripped my coffee mug, the steam curling up. I watched cars pass, my mind on Evan. Would he show? Would he believe me? I checked my phone, 8:55 a.m. The bell above the door jingled. A man walked in, tall, dark hair, slight stubble, wearing a gray jacket. His eyes, tired but kind, matched his LinkedIn photo. Evan Harper. He scanned the room, spotting me. I raised a hand, my heart thudding. He nodded, crossing the diner with a stride that carried weight, like he was bracing for a storm. Elise, he said, sliding into the booth. Yeah. Evan. I set my mug down, my voice steady. He nodded, his jaw tight. Show me. I pulled out my laptop, opened the flash drive, and turned the screen toward him. Texts, photos, receipts, the voicemail. His eyes narrowed with each swipe, his hand clenching the table's edge. When he saw the photo of Lila on the lake house porch, he froze. That's my design, he muttered. The porch railing. I built it for our cabin. I swallowed hard. Caleb and I own the lake house. They've been using it for months. He leaned back, eyes shut, his face pale. I thought it was just work. Lila's been distant, but I blamed her job. I never. He trailed off, shaking his head. How long have you known? Since Thursday, I said. But I suspected for months. You. Same. Small things. Her phone, her trips. I didn't want to believe it. He opened his eyes, meeting mine. What's your plan? I leaned forward, my voice low. We go to the lake house Sunday morning. They're arriving at 6 p.m. Saturday. We'll be there first, waiting. No yelling, no drama. Just us, the truth, and them facing it. He nodded slowly, his eyes hard. I'm in. But I need one thing. What? I have a spare key to the cabin. Lila doesn't know I kept it. He pulled it from his pocket, setting it on the table. We can get an early setup. I stared at the key, my pulse quickening. Perfect. I slid it into my bag. Caleb thinks I'm meeting a client in Bend this weekend. He won't suspect a thing. Evan's lips twitched, not a smile, but close. Lila thinks I'm in Boise. Same deal. We sat in silence, the diner's hum around us. Two strangers, planning to upend their lives. I felt a strange calm, like the air before a storm. Caleb and Lila thought they were safe. They were wrong. The diner's coffee was bitter, but I sipped it anyway, sitting across from Evan in the booth at Sunny's. His hands rested on the table, one finger tracing the edge of his mug, his eyes fixed on the flash drive between us. The weight of what we'd just shared, screenshots, texts, proof of Caleb and Lila's affair, hung in the air like smoke. We weren't just strangers anymore. We were allies, bound by the same betrayal, planning to face it together. The lake house loomed in my mind, no longer a sanctuary but a stage for truth. Evan leaned forward, his voice low. So Sunday morning. We get to the lake house first. Then what? I set my mug down, my hands steady despite the storm inside. We wait. They walk in, see us, and realize their lies are done. No shouting, no chaos. Just the truth laid bare. He nodded, his jaw tight. And the key. He tapped the spare lake house key on the table, the one Lila didn't know he had. We use it to get in early, I said. Set up the space. Make it impossible for them to dodge what's coming. He exhaled, running a hand through his dark hair. Lila loves that cabin. Said it was her escape. I designed the porch, you know. For her. His voice cracked just a fraction. Now it's their hideout. I swallowed, thinking of Caleb's promises to build a deck, to make the lake house ours again after my miscarriage. It's my cabin too. Caleb and I bought it 5 years ago. It was supposed to be our fresh start. My voice stayed even, but my chest ached. They took that from us. Evan's eyes met mine, tired but sharp. Then we take it back. We spent the next hour mapping it out. The lake house was an hour from Albany, nestled by Lake Wenatchee, surrounded by pines. Caleb and Lila were set to arrive Saturday at 6 p.m., based on their texts. We'd get there Sunday at 8 a.m., early enough to prepare. Evan knew the layout. His firm had designed parts of the cabin for the previous owners. There's a living room with a big table, he said. Faces the front door. We can sit there, have everything ready. Everything? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Proof. He nodded at the flash drive. Printouts of the texts, receipts, whatever you've got. Lay it out like evidence in a courtroom. I liked that. Not revenge, but clarity. I've got a folder ready, I said. Screenshots, the wine shop receipt, an Uber confirmation from Lila's neighborhood. Even a voicemail. His eyes widened slightly. You've been thorough. I had to be. I said, my voice low. Caleb's good at lying. I needed to know I wasn't crazy. Evan leaned back, his face hard. Lila's the same. Always has an answer. Work trip, late meeting. I bought it every time. He shook his head. Not anymore. We agreed on details. I'd drive from Portland, he'd come from Beaverton. We'd meet at the lake house, use his key and set up inside. I suggested bringing a bottle of wine, Lila's favorite, Pinot Noir, mentioned in her texts. Not to drink, I said. To set the scene. Like they planned. Evan's lips twitched, almost a smile. Cold Elise. I like it. It's not about being cold, I said, meeting his gaze. It's about showing them what they thought they could hide. He nodded, his fingers tapping the key. What do you think they'll do? When they see us? I pictured Caleb's grin, the one he flashed when caught in a small lie. Like forgetting to take out the trash. Caleb will talk, I said, my eyes on the wine glasses. He'll try to charm his way out, like always. Lila. She'll cry, Evan said, his jaw tight. Then she'll beg. But it won't change anything. We fell silent again, the air thick with anticipation. I checked my phone. 8:45 a.m. They'd be down soon, maybe for coffee, maybe to pack up. They'd walk into this room, expecting another day of their secret life, and find us instead. My pulse quickened, but my hands stayed steady. I adjusted the folder, aligning the papers perfectly. Everything was ready. Outside, the lake sparkled, the pines swaying in a light breeze. The cabin felt alive, holding its breath with us. Evan sat beside me, his coffee cold now, his eyes fixed on the door. We were two strangers, united by pain, waiting to reclaim what was ours. The truth was our weapon, and it was loaded. The lake house key sat heavy in my pocket as I drove toward Lake Wenatchee that Sunday morning. The sky was clear, the air sharp with pine and frost. My hands gripped the steering wheel, my bag on the passenger seat holding the folder of proof, texts, receipts, screenshots, Lila's voicemail. Evan and I had texted last night, confirming. 8 a.m. at the cabin. Caleb and Lila were set to arrive the night before, oblivious to what waited. My heart thudded, not with fear, but with a cold resolve. Today the lies ended. I pulled up at 7:50 a.m. The lake house nestled among towering pines, its wooden exterior glowing in the morning light. Evan's black truck was already there, parked near the steps, dusted with pollen. I grabbed my bag, the key biting into my palm, and walked to the porch. The lake was still, reflecting the gray sky, a mirror to the calm I forced into my voice all week. Inside, Evan stood by the window, holding a mug of coffee, his eyes on the water. He turned as I entered, nodding, his face tight but steady. "Sleep any?" he asked, his voice low, almost soft. "Barely," I said, setting my bag on a wooden chair. "You?" He shrugged, sipping his coffee. Closed my eyes for a bit. "Architects don't sleep much." I managed a small smile, the tension easing just a fraction. The cabin smelled of pine and damp wood, familiar but wrong. This was my place, Caleb's and mine, where we'd planned a future that never came. Now it was their hideout, stained by Lila's red silk dress and Caleb's lies. I pushed the thought away, focusing on the task. We moved to the living room, the long wooden table facing the front door. Evan had brought a bottle of Pinot Noir, Lila's favorite, from her texts. I set out 4 wine glasses, the crystal ones Caleb always packed for his refined weekends. The irony twisted my gut, but I kept moving, arranging the glasses in a neat row. Evan pulled 2 chairs to the table, facing the entrance, so Caleb and Lila would see us the moment they walked in. "Think they're still here?" I asked, glancing at the stairs to the loft bedroom. Evan shook his head. "Drove by last night late. Their car was here. Probably still asleep." I nodded, my stomach tightening. I opened my bag, pulling out the folder. Printouts of texts, receipts, the Uber confirmation from Lila's neighborhood, a transcript of her voicemail. I spread them across the table, deliberate, like setting a stage. Evan added a few of his own, Lila's credit card statements, showing charges at the same wine bar Caleb frequented. The evidence sat there, undeniable, a map of their betrayal. Evan paced to the window, then back. "This place," he said, his voice low. "I designed the porch for Lila. Thought it'd be our retreat. Never imagined." He trailed off, his hand clenching. I touched the table, my fingers tracing the grain. "Caleb promised a deck here. After I lost our baby. Said it'd be our fresh start." My voice stayed steady, but the ache was there. "He never built it." Evan looked at me, his eyes softening. "They took this place from us. Today we take it back." We sat, adjusting the lights to a soft amber glow, not too harsh, but clear enough to catch every expression. I placed the wine bottle in the center, the label facing out, a silent jab at their plans. Evan set the spare key beside it, a reminder of their carelessness. We didn't talk much after that, just sat in the quiet, the hum of the cabin's heater the only sound. The clock on the wall ticked closer to 9 a.m. "Do you think we're going too far?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't doubt the plan, but the weight of it pressed on me. Evan shook his head, his eyes on the door. "This isn't revenge. It's truth. They don't get to hide anymore." I nodded, his words settling me. This wasn't about hurting them. It was about facing them, about ending the lies that had stolen our peace. I thought about Caleb, probably upstairs now, tangled in sheets with Lila, thinking he'd pulled it off. I thought about the years I'd spent trusting him, paying the mortgage on this cabin, believing his "I love you"s. The anger was there, but it was quiet, focused. I was ready. Evan glanced at me, his voice low. "How do you think they'll react?" "Caleb will talk," I said, my eyes on the wine glasses. "He'll try to charm his way out, like always." "Lila. She'll cry," Evan said, his jaw tight. "Then she'll beg. But it won't change anything." We fell silent again, the air thick with anticipation. I checked my phone. 8:45 a.m. They'd be down soon, maybe for coffee, maybe to pack up. They'd walk into this room, expecting another day of their secret life, and find us instead. My pulse quickened, but my hands stayed steady. I adjusted the folder, aligning the papers perfectly. Everything was ready. Outside, the lake sparkled, the pines swaying in a light breeze. The cabin felt alive, holding its breath with us. Evan sat beside me, his coffee cold now, his eyes fixed on the door. We were 2 strangers, united by pain, waiting to reclaim what was ours. The truth was our weapon, and it was loaded. The cabin's air felt tight, like a wire pulled taut, ready to snap. Evan and I sat at the long wooden table, facing the front door. The folder of proof spread out before us. Texts, receipts, Lila's voicemail transcript, all neatly aligned. The Pinot Noir bottle stood in the center, flanked by 4 crystal wine glasses, a silent taunt. The amber lights cast soft shadows, making the room feel both warm and cold, like a stage set for a reckoning. The clock ticked toward 9:15 a.m. Caleb and Lila were upstairs, probably stirring now, unaware of the trap waiting below. Evan's hands rested on the table, one finger tapping lightly, his eyes fixed on the door. I sat still, my pulse steady but loud in my ears. The quiet was heavy, broken only by the hum of the heater and the faint creak of floorboards above. They were awake. I heard a muffled laugh, Lila's voice, then Caleb's low murmur. My stomach twisted, but I didn't flinch. I'd spent months ignoring the signs, but not today. Today, I was ready. The stairs creaked. Footsteps slow at first, then faster. Evan glanced at me, his jaw tight, and I nodded. The door swung open, and Lila stepped in first, her dark hair messy, a silk robe tied loosely around her. She was carrying a mug, smiling, until her eyes landed on us. Her face froze, the mug slipping slightly in her hand. Caleb bumped into her from behind, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, a bottle of sparkling water in his hand. He looked up, saw Evan, and stopped dead. The bottle hit the floor, rolling across the hardwood, the sound sharp in the silence. Elise. Caleb's voice was a croak, his eyes wide. What are you doing here? Lila's gaze darted to Evan, her mouth opening then closing. Evan, welcome, I said, my voice light, almost breezy, cutting through their stammering. We've set the table. Wine, glasses, and the truth. Sit down. Caleb dropped the duffel, his face pale. Lila stepped back, clutching her robe, her eyes flicking to the folder on the table. Evan stood, his voice low but steely. You told me you were at a work retreat, Lila. With colleagues. Sent me a goodnight text even. He pointed at the wine bottle. Pinot Noir, right? Your favorite. Lila's cheeks flushed, her hands trembling. Evan, please, it's not. Don't, he said, his voice cutting like a blade. Don't lie. Not now. Caleb took a step toward me, his hands up, like he could smooth this over. Elise, listen, this isn't what you think. It's. I tilted my head. My eyes locked on his. Not what I think. Then explain the texts, Caleb. The lake house plans. The wine receipts. The Uber to her neighborhood. I tapped the folder. It's all here. Months of it. He froze, his mouth working, no words coming out. Lila sank into a chair, her face crumpling, tears already welling. Evan stayed standing, his arms crossed, staring at her like he was seeing a stranger. I pushed the folder forward, opening it to reveal the printouts. You've been using our lake house, I said, my voice steady. The one we bought after I lost our baby. You brought her here, Caleb. To our place. His eyes darted to the papers, then back to me. Elise, I swear I didn't mean. Didn't mean what? I cut him off, my voice sharp now. To lie? To sneak around? To let me pay the mortgage while you played house with her? Lila sobbed, covering her face. Evan, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. Evan's jaw clenched, his voice cold. You didn't want to hurt me? You lied about everything. Work trips, late nights. You texted me miss you while you were here with him. He pointed at Caleb, who flinched. Caleb grabbed the folder, flipping through it, his hands shaking. You spied on me, he said, his voice rising, a mix of anger and panic. You went through my phone? I verified the truth, I said, meeting his gaze. Because you left me no choice. I trusted you, Caleb. For years. And you built a whole life behind my back. He threw the folder down, papers scattering. This is insane, Elise. You're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? I leaned forward, my voice low. Then tell me why you lied about Eugene. Why you locked your phone. Why you stopped looking at me. He opened his mouth, then shut it, his eyes red. Lila's sobs filled the room, her hands still over her face. Evan stepped closer to her, his voice quieter now, but heavy. How long, Lila? She looked up, tears streaming. 6 months, she whispered. It just happened. Just happened. Evan's voice was a low growl. You planned weekends here. In my cabin. The one I designed for us. I felt a pang, not just for me, but for Evan. We were mirrors, reflecting the same pain. I stood, picking up a photo from the folder. Lila on the porch, Caleb's arm around her. This, I said, holding it up. This is what you chose. Over us. Caleb's face crumpled, his voice breaking. Elise, I love you. I messed up, but I love you. I stepped back, shaking my head. If this is love, you can keep it. You don't betray someone you love. Not like this. The room went quiet, the air thick with their silence, their guilt. Lila's sobs slowed, her hands dropping to her lap. Caleb stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped. Evan and I exchanged a glance, a silent agreement. This wasn't about yelling or revenge. It was about showing them the truth, raw and unfiltered. They couldn't run from it now. The silence in the lake house was suffocating, broken only by Lila's uneven breaths and the faint tick of the wall clock. Caleb sat across from me, his head bowed, the folder of proof scattered on the table like the wreckage of our lives. Evan stood by the window, his back to Lila, his fists clenched. The Pinot Noir bottle and crystal glasses mocked us all, a centerpiece to their ruined plans. I felt hollow, not angry anymore, just empty. The truth was out, laid bare in texts and receipts, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I leaned forward, my voice steady, eyes on Caleb. Have you ever told Lila about the debt? He stiffened, his head snapping up. The $38,000 you racked up in 2016, betting on sports. Your dad bailed you out, didn't he? To save your job. Lila's eyes widened, darting to Caleb. What? She whispered, her voice raw from crying. Caleb's jaw tightened, his face flushing. Elise, that's got nothing to do with this. Doesn't it? I tilted my head, my gaze unrelenting. You told me I was too busy, too distant, but you never mentioned I've been carrying this cabin's mortgage alone, or that I kept separate accounts after your gambling. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I saw how much you could hide. Lila turned to him, stunned. You never said anything about that. It wasn't her business, Caleb snapped, his eyes flashing. It's old news. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Old news? Like your lies about Eugene? Or the fact that you brought her to the place where I lost our baby? Caleb flinched, his hands gripping the table. Evan turned from the window, his voice low, directed at Lila. And you, Lila. You told me the bank held up our garage renovation loan. But you funneled $12,000 to a detox program in Eugene. For your sister, right? Mar? Lila's face paled, her hands trembling in her lap. Evan, I didn't want you to worry. Worry. Evan's voice was sharp, cutting through her excuse. You hid it. Just like you hid this. He gestured at Caleb, at the folder. You've been living two lives, Lila. One with me, one with him. And neither was honest. The room fell silent again, the weight of our words pressing down. I looked at Caleb, then Lila, their faces etched with guilt, shame, fear. You two have one thing in common, I said, my voice slow, deliberate. You've never been honest. Not with us, not with each other. Just polished lies, dressed up as love. Lila burst into tears again, her head dropping. I never meant for it to go this far, she sobbed. I swear. You let it, I said, my tone flat. You chose it. Every text, every weekend, every lie. Caleb looked at me, his eyes red, pleading. Elise, I'm sorry. I was wrong, but I love you. We can fix this. I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust, Caleb. Love doesn't mean anything when it's built on lies. Evan stepped closer to the table, his voice heavy but calm. Lila, what hurts most isn't the affair. It's that you never thought I deserved the truth. You decided I wasn't worth it. Lila's sobs grew quieter, her hands clutching her robe. She didn't respond. She couldn't. I stood, my chair scraping the floor, and pulled another folder from my bag. I didn't come here to save anything, I said, placing it on the table. I came to end it. Caleb's eyes flicked to the folder, his brow furrowing. What's that? Divorce papers, I said, my voice clear. And financial records. Everything's documented. Joint assets are already separated. My lawyers reviewed it all. His face drained of color. Elise, you can't. I can. I cut him off, my eyes locked on his. And I am. Evan glanced at me, his expression unreadable, then turned to Lila. I don't know what's next for us, he said, his voice low. But I know I can't live with lies anymore. The room felt like it was shrinking, the air too thick to breathe. Then Lila stood, her chair wobbling, her face streaked with tears. Wait, she said, her voice shaking. There's something I haven't said. Evan froze, his eyes narrowing. I felt a chill, my hands gripping the table's edge. Caleb looked at her, confused. What? He asked, his voice sharp. Lila swallowed hard, her eyes flicking between us, landing on Evan. I'm pregnant, she whispered. The world stopped. The clock's ticking echoed like a gunshot. My breath caught, my mind blank. Caleb jumped up, his chair scraping. What did you say? Lila nodded, her lips trembling. I found out last week. I was going to tell you this weekend, Caleb, but, she turned to Evan, her eyes glistening. It's yours, Evan. I'm sure. Caleb and I were always careful. Evan's face went slack, his hands dropping to his sides. I felt numb, like I'd stepped outside my body again. A baby. A life tangled in this mess. Caleb stared at Lila, his mouth open, his eyes wild with shock, anger, something I couldn't name. You're pregnant, he repeated, his voice low, almost a growl. With his kid. Don't, Lila snapped, her voice finding strength. I messed up, Caleb, but I never lied about my feelings. Not like you. I stood, my legs unsteady, my eyes on the folder of divorce papers. This changes nothing, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. For me, it's over. Evan turned away, his back to us, staring out the window. I need air, he muttered, his voice barely audible. I nodded, grabbing my bag. So do I. We stepped onto the porch, leaving Caleb and Lila in the wreckage of their lies. The lake was calm, the air cold against my skin. Inside, I heard Lila's muffled sobs, Caleb's low voice, but it felt distant, like a storm I'd already weathered. Evan leaned against the railing, his face pale, his hands gripping the wood. A baby, he said, his voice hollow. Didn't see that coming. Neither did I said, my breath visible in the chilly air. But it doesn't change what they did. He nodded, his eyes on the water. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. I touched his arm, just briefly. You don't have to know. Not yet. We stood there, the lake house behind us, the truth laid bare inside. Caleb and Lila were still in there, grappling with their choices, but I was done. The divorce papers were signed. My heart was clear. Whatever came next, it was mine to build. The lake house porch was cold, the morning air biting my skin as Evan and I stood side by side, the chaos inside fading behind us. The lake stretched out, calm and gray, like it was holding its breath. Caleb and Lila were still in the living room, their voices muffled through the walls, Lila's sobs, Caleb's low, strained words. The bombshell of her pregnancy hung heavy, but it didn't shake me. My path was clear. The divorce papers sat on the table, signed in my steady hand, a line drawn through the life I'd built with Caleb. I was done. Evan leaned against the railing, his knuckles white, his eyes lost in the water. A baby, he muttered again, like saying it would make it real. What am I supposed to do with that? I crossed my arms, the lake house key still in my pocket, a weight I didn't need anymore. You don't have to decide now, I said, my voice soft but firm. That's their mess. You just take care of you. He nodded, his jaw tight, but didn't speak. I knew he was reeling. Lila's betrayal, her pregnancy, the cabin he'd designed now a stage for lies. I felt it too, the sting of Caleb's affair, the theft of our lake house, the years I'd poured into a marriage that crumbled under secrets. But standing here, the air sharp and clean, I felt lighter. Not healed, not yet, but free. Inside, the voices stopped. The door creaked open, and Caleb stepped out, his face pale, his hair messy. He saw me, then Evan, and froze. Elise, he said, his voice rough. Can we talk? Alone. I shook my head, my eyes steady. There's nothing left to say, Caleb. The papers are inside. Sign them or don't. I'm moving on. His mouth opened, then closed, his eyes red. I didn't mean for it to end like this. I love you. Stop. I held up a hand, my voice cutting through his plea. You loved the idea of me, not me. You chose her, this cabin, your lies. You don't get to rewrite that now. He flinched, his shoulders slumping. Evan turned, his voice low, directed at Caleb. You should go. Both of you. Caleb's eyes flicked to Evan, then back to me, but he didn't move. The door opened again, and Lila appeared, her robe tied tight, her face streaked with tears. She looked at Evan, her lips trembling. "Evan, I'm so sorry. I never wanted." "Enough," Evan said, his voice hard. "You made your choices, Lila. Now live with them." She nodded, her hands clutching her stomach, the pregnancy a silent presence between us. I felt a pang, not for her, but for the child caught in this wreckage. But that wasn't my burden. I turned to Evan. "I'm ready to leave." He nodded, grabbing his keys from his pocket. "Me too." We walked to our cars, Caleb and Lila still on the porch, watching us go. I didn't look back. The crunch of gravel under my boots was the only sound, steady and final. I slid into my car, the folder of proof still in my bag, the divorce papers waiting for Caleb's signature. Evan paused by his truck, glancing at me. "You okay?" "I will be," I said, managing a small smile. "You." He exhaled, his breath visible in the cold. "Eventually. Want to grab something to eat? There's a place in Wenatchee, nothing fancy, but they do good pancakes." I laughed, the sound surprising me, raw and real. "Yeah. I'm starving." We drove separately to a small diner off the highway, its windows glowing yellow against the gray morning. Inside, we sat in a booth, the smell of coffee and bacon wrapping around us. We didn't talk about the cabin, or Lila, or Caleb. Instead, Evan told me about a bridge he'd designed in Beaverton, how he'd almost quit engineering to open a bakery. I shared my old dream of a coastal bookstore, one Caleb had called impractical. The words came easy, like we weren't strangers who'd just faced down our spouse's betrayal. The pancakes were warm, the syrup sweet, and for the first time in days, I felt my shoulders loosen. Evan wasn't a lover, not a replacement for Caleb. He was something better, a friend, forged in the fire of that morning. We paid the bill, shook hands outside, a silent promise to stay in touch. I drove back to Portland, the lake house fading in my rearview, a chapter closed. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of my new home in Cannon Beach, a small cottage by the sea. The divorce was final in weeks. Caleb didn't fight it, maybe knowing he'd lose more if he tried. I got most of our assets, including a payout for the lake house, which I sold to a young couple with stars in their eyes. I didn't need it anymore, not its ghosts, not its pain. Caleb's career took a hit. His boss, a no-nonsense woman, heard whispers of his affair at a company event. He wasn't fired, but the big promotion he'd chased slipped away. He was just another guy now, managing a small team, his charm dulled. Evan texted me last week. "Baby's here. Girl healthy. Lila and I are navigating, messy but honest." He sent a photo, a tiny fist curled around his finger, his eyes soft but tired. I didn't know if they'd stay together, but they were trying, rebuilding on truth, not lies. I smiled, happy for him, for the child who'd brought light to his storm. Me, I'm alone but not lonely. I left my CFO job, trading late nights for freelance consulting, setting my own hours. I wake to the sound of waves, not alarms. I've started writing again, a journal, a few pages of a novel, words I'd buried for years. Evan and I talk sometimes, a quick text, a rare call. Saw a beach house in Astoria, thought of you, he'll say, and I'll laugh, knowing he gets it. We're friends, the kind who don't need much, just a nod to know we're there. That night, I sat on my deck, a mug of tea in my hands, the sea whispering below. Caleb was gone, not just from my life but from my heart. No anger, no regret, just peace, hard-won and mine. I'd survived the betrayal, the cabin, the lies. I'd found myself again, stronger, clearer, whole. The sea stretched endless before my Cannon Beach cottage, its waves a steady heartbeat under the dusk sky. I leaned back in my wicker chair, a blanket over my knees, the air salty and cool. 6 months ago, I'd stood in the lake house, facing Caleb's lies, Lila's tears, the shock of her pregnancy. That day broke me open, but it also set me free. I wasn't the wife who'd ignored the signs, who'd clung to a rotting marriage. I was Elise, 36, starting over, unafraid. Caleb faded from my life like a bad dream. He signed the divorce papers, moved to a small apartment in Portland, his career stalled. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I sold the lake house, its memories too heavy, and bought this cottage, where the sea sings me to sleep. My new work, freelance consulting, gives me freedom, time to write, to breathe. I counsel women like me, divorced and rebuilding, sharing not just numbers but the truth of survival. Evan's a quiet constant, a friend born from that dark day. His texts, babies laughing now, sounds like Lila bring a smile, proof that healing's possible, even if slow. I don't seek love, not yet. I'm learning to love myself first. Something Caleb's lies taught me to reclaim. The pain of his betrayal lingers, faint now, like a scar that only aches in the rain. I don't regret walking away. Some people enter your life to teach you how to leave, and Caleb was mine. I sipped my tea, the stars waking above. My story isn't a tragedy, it's a rebirth. Loss cleared my path, and I'm grateful I chose to walk it.